Welcome back in. Let's go ahead and get right into it. Today, we're going to be discussing Dameon Pierce, who is one of my favorite mid-round running backs you can get your hands on this season. I think he's being undervalued. I think he's being slept on. I think there's a pretty big ceiling here for Dameon Pierce. So we're going to get into that right now. Now, last season as a rookie, Dameon Pierce averaged almost 20 touches per game. He also had 35 red zone touches last year, 939 rushing yards, 165 receiving yards, and 5 touchdowns. He was also 12.8 fantasy points per game last season. Now, with Dameon Pierce last season, handled 74.3% of the team's rushing attempts over his 13 games that he played. I don't think it's going to change all that much for him this year. If you look at it, last season, he was also terrific as a runner. He was 11th in evaded tackles. He was 23rd in yards created per touch. He was second in elusive rating, and he was top 10 in PFF's rushing grade. He was also 12th in yards after contact per attempt. But he was also good as a pass catcher. He was 26th in yards per route run as well. We know going back to college, he was also very good as a pass catcher in Florida, even albeit on a limited sample size. I also think this offense is going to be better than it was last season. Last season, this offense was kind of a dumpster fire with injuries. And really with Davis Mills really being a quarterback last season. I think the addition of CJ Stroud, obviously in the draft this year, is going to allow them to take a big step forward offensively. While their pass catching weapons aren't elite with Dalton Schultz, I am excited to see what Tank Dell and John Mechie both do this year now that John Mechie is back. Thankfully recovered from last season. And so I think there's enough here in Nico Collins, in addition to Dalton Schultz. There's a lot to like. Also, this offensive line should be something that we talk about because this offensive line, I think, could take a pretty big jump this year. They were 31st in adjusted line yards last season, and they were also PFF ranked them in terms of pass blocking efficiency was 22nd, and run blocking was 9th. They have made some additions to this offensive line this offseason. They already have one of the best left tackles in the game in Larry Tunsil. Titus Howard is one of the better right tackles. And then they drafted Kenyon Green last year in the second round. I think he takes another big step forward this year. They added Shaq Mason, who's going to be a big upgrade at right guard for them, and they also went out and acquired Juice Scruggs in the draft in the second round out of Penn State. And so I think this offensive line overall, while PFF has them ranked 25th, I will say I think there's a lot of upside with this offensive line as long as they can stay healthy. So I really like what they're doing here with this offensive line here. And, I think this offense is going to be better this year. And so those are all positive things for Dameon Pierce. Now, the elephant in the room is going to be Devin Singletary, right? That's what everybody's going to be talking about. How much is this going to be like some 50-50 split or anything like that? I'm going to say no. This scheme, I do think that this offense you can kind of figure to be fairly run heavy. Where this head coaching staff with D'Amico Ryans, offensive coordinator, came from was from San Francisco, the Kyle Shanahan coaching tree. So especially with the rookie quarterback. So I think there's a lot to like there. Now, one thing I've seen a lot of people talk about is Devin Singletary, like he's going to be this third down back, and I don't buy that for one bit. Devin Singletary's never been a good pass catcher, right? Like there's a difference between being a functional pass catcher, like someone that you can just throw out there and like you can do dump offs and stuff too, versus somebody that you can actually line up outside in the slot, gain separation, like be a good receiver as a running back, right? There's a big difference between those two. And I think we need to make that distinction because the only thing I hear people talk about with Devin Singletary when you bring him up is his routes run, that he's top 10 over the last 2 years in routes run among running backs. And I don't really care because, it's not like he was drawing this heavy amount of targets. Like that just wasn't happening, right? And if you look at Devin Singletary in terms of over the last 3 seasons as a pass catcher, he has not been very good at all, to say the least. Now, in terms of PFF's receiving grade, the last 3 years, he's ranked 91st, 147th, and 96th. In terms of yards per route run, which is a good indicator as well, he was 53rd in yards per route run last year, 70th in yards per route run the year before, and 96th in 2020. And then yards per reception, once again, he was 31st last season, his best mark he's had, 68th in 2021, and 41st in 2020. He is not a good pass catcher, okay? Yes, last season was actually his best year as a pass protector, as a blocker. Before that, he'd kind of been terrible at it, but there's been a lot of talk about Dameon Pierce spent all offseason really working on that. That's something that he really wants to get better at to allow him to be more of a 3-down back. And honestly, most rookie running backs that come into the league are not good at that. That's something that really takes them some time. It's not a factor. It's not something they focus on in college. I'm not really worried about that part either. Now, in terms of just a pure rusher, that's Dameon Pierce. Dameon Pierce was fantastic as a runner last season. And might add, in one of the worst offenses in the league. So if this offense can take a step forward this year, that's why there's a lot to like. I still think that Dameon Pierce is the engine that's going to run this offense. It's all the talk with training camp so far that it's all Dameon Pierce. Yes, Devin Singletary will mix in, but I'm gonna be honest. Like Rex Burkhead was the best pass catcher, was a better pass catcher than Devin Singletary was, right? And we know how that turned out, right? Dameon Pierce still ran this offense, so this is going to be a really good scheme that he's going to be running in. Obviously, coming from this Kyle Shanahan offense, I think there's a lot to like there as well. So Dameon Pierce, I think, really has a top 12 upside here. I think he can be an RB1 very easily this season. We saw him as long as he can stay healthy. I think he's going to be a 3-down back. I think he's going to be somebody that's going to be handling pass catching work here in this offense as well. And so I think he's being overlooked by some of the other sexier names that we've kind of talked about. I do like Cam Akers, but I know people would rather prefer him to him. Is dealing with injuries and has kind of suffered through some of that. And so I look at Dameon Pierce. I think he's being undervalued quite a bit right now, and I don't think he should be. I think if had he finished out the full season, we would be having this conversation right last season. With Dameon Pierce. So I like Dameon Pierce a lot. If you can get him in like the 5th or 6th round, I am about that life, and I think he is a terrific target if you're running a zero RB strategy as well. So I love Dameon Pierce. I don't mind him as my RB2 at all. I think he has top 12 upside this season. I think he can easily be an RB1. I think his ceiling is probably somewhere around RB7 or RB8. I don't think it's hot whatsoever. So let me know in the comment section below. What are your thoughts about Dameon Pierce? Are you buying him? Are you avoiding him because he's on the Houston Texans offense? Let me know in the comment section below. We'll see you on the next one. Bye.